So a bit about our guest. Vijay Sharma is, am I catching two mics here? Okay. Um, Vijay, okay. Vijay Sharma is an acclaimed business professional with experience in successfully creating large base of the pyramid operations in multiple organizations in India. Um, since 2011, Vijay has been heading the rural business for GSK Consumer Healthcare, creating a lucrative, high trajectory business from scratch, all in a very short time. He has conceptualized, designed, and implemented the strategy that included innovative ways to enhance the reach of GSK's consumer healthcare products, including new consumer engagement platforms, and strong processes to take the business to scale in a very short time. The project has moved on to become one of the largest growth contributors to the organization. Previously, he was the head of Unilever's Project Shakti, a case which I know some of the students in the room here have studied, and Vijay will actually be speaking about tomorrow in Kate Cooney's class, who, if anybody hasn't seen Kate has also been integral in bringing, or actually the force behind bringing Vijay to campus, so thank you, Kate. And he was previously the head of Unilever's Project Shakti, as I was saying, a case study in various universities globally, and as an example of how to create a strong positive impact on the community while doing business. We're just thrilled to be able to tap into this global expertise that Vijay brings of new vision for doing business, and really interested to hear his story and delve into the experience that he had in building these different business lines. So Vijay, thank you so much for coming.
Thanks, Stuart. First of all, let me thank all those people who have been responsible to get me here. Tony, thanks a lot. Sudhir, Kate, and Stuart, and a lot of people who have actually worked to make this possible, my visit possible. And thanks a lot for organizing lovely weather as well. Yeah. Well, I'm extremely happy to be here, to be honest. And while I was coming here, I was trying to think as to why is it that I'm so happy to be here. And I realized that there are three clear reasons. The first one is that I, of course, believe that the academic world and the business world need to have strong dialogues. And it's not just for effect that I say that. I have seen businesses who have survived because of that discussion, right? And I'll talk about some of those tomorrow. I can't do that today. But so that's one reason why I thought I should be here. The second one is a little bit more personal. So I guess when I was growing up, my parents, my mom and my dad lay huge amount of emphasis on education. And my father himself is a professor of plasma physics. And I guess during his entire working life, he would have put in almost about 80 to 100 papers to further the human understanding of the subject. And I thought if I could actually come in here and contribute my bit, it'll be like a temple visit for me. So that's another reason why I'm extremely happy to be here. And the third and perhaps the more selfish reason is that when I'm back there working on my business, then perhaps it's just me and my team who is working and thinking about what to do and what next to do. But when I come here, then I kind of seed a lot of those thoughts in these intelligent people and their brains, and a lot more people apart from me then start thinking about what to do. And I'm sure with that thinking, what comes out is the inspirational energy that I get. And I almost always go back to my work a lot more energized with a lot more ideas. And that's something which I'm looking forward to between today and tomorrow. Yeah. Before I start, let me try and give you a little bit of context of what I've been working and my career so far. I could divide my career into two distinct parts. Okay, the first part of the phase one of my career is where I was working with traditional business models. I was trying to, I was doing the marketing and sales the way it's been done and been taught for years, understanding consumers, making brilliant advertising, etc., and then going and gaining share. And Sudhir and I were talking about this some time back. And then I moved on and became the head of Project Shakti, and there things changed. My paradigm changed. How we do businesses, that changed. And that's had quite a lasting impact or quite a lasting impression on me. And that's something which I really would want to share with all of you here. So my first and foremost concept or proposition is that, yes, business can make a difference. So businesses can lead to development, right? And I'm sure you would have heard about this a lot. However, as I grew in my career and I started thinking more and more, I realized that there are various situations and there are various scenarios where not only can business help in development, but you know what? It makes business sense to do it. So for the sake of business, you need to build models where development is integrated with the business. And that's something which I will talk about. The area where I have been working for the last 8 to 10 years has been specifically rural India, right? And for those of you who know this, it's a huge market, right? 833 million people. It's almost like 1 out of every 6 people on this entire planet lives in rural India. Yeah? It's equal to the entire population of US and European Union put together. It's that large a market. Yeah? However, it's also the most underserved market, right? And there are 3 clear reasons why we say it's underserved. There are 3 key challenges which are there. The first one is that how do we reach them? And when we talk about reach, then the 833 million rural consumers who are there, they are living or inhabiting about 640,000 villages, which means that the unit size of each and every village is very, very small. And therefore, in these small unit sizes, the traditional business models are not viable, right? So you go into this village, and the business that you get from this village is so small that the traditional businessman will say, no, it doesn't make sense to me. Yeah? The second is that, of course, the infrastructure is fairly weak, although it's improving, but this is the reason why we have challenge of reach. The second is, how do we influence behavior change? Even if we were to reach there, and coming from FMCG and FMCH organizations, one of the tasks is about changing behaviors. How do we change their behaviors? What we realize is that they live in a lot more close-knit communities. They have traditional habits which are there, which are very difficult to change. So that's the second challenge which is there. And the third one is, how do we communicate with them when mass media really doesn't reach them? So there are places where the TV penetration in states like, for example, Bihar, it's in the region of 15%. Only 15 people out of every 100 houses have a TV. Even if they have a TV, the quality of reach is very weak because at times there is no electricity, right? Or if the electricity is there, it's aligned to the agricultural needs. So when you got electricity, you got people who are on the farms, right? And when they come back, there is no electricity, and you got a TV which doesn't work in that sense. Yeah? So these are 3 critical challenges which are there. And my proposition to all of you is that we can overcome these challenges if in the business model construct, we add the element of development. So if business and development come together and interlock itself in the model itself, then we can overcome this. And I'm going to take 3 examples, 3 quick examples to show or demonstrate how it can be done, right? The first one is an example which I guess we've been talking about, which is coming from Unilever. It's on Project Shakti. And this is where how Unilever actually moved on in its journey of distribution of its products and moved to almost about 50,000 villages. Let's start with the context that we were facing there. If you look at these markets have a big problem of poverty. Almost about 33% of Indian population is living at less than $1 a day, or $1.25 a day. That's the World Bank stats, right? Most of these guys are actually engaged in working on the field. So there are no jobs in these places apart from the jobs which come in from agriculture, right? And therefore, they're seasonal in nature. Yeah? And therefore, the only solution or most of the solution for people to come out of poverty is to build an enterprise. And if you have to build an enterprise, the problem that they were facing was that they've got extremely low savings, and therefore they do not get the right kind of investments from the banks or the financial institutions, and therefore they get low income. And that's the trap that they are really caught in. What was happening during this time was there was two things which were happening. A, we found that a lot of self-help groups were actually coming into being. So self-help groups were coming in. Equally, microfinance institutes were coming in. So both of these together was some way of solving the problem of investment and savings. Okay? So that was happening. However, there was a need for micro enterprise. So if you have investment, if you have money, if you then couple that or add micro enterprise to that, then you can break the cycle. And that's where Unilever Shakti program came into being. So together we offered a microcredit and a micro enterprise opportunity by virtue of which people could actually break the vicious cycle of poverty. So essentially, the program of Shakti was a micro enterprise program where we would reach out to women who were in need of livelihood opportunities, and we would do that through the NGOs and the microfinance institutes. Having got to these women, then our role was primarily in coaching and training them and making sure that their income goes up, right? Because our business was completely linked to their earnings. So if the entrepreneurs earned well, if they sold more, or if they had a big business, we would grow. And that's how we kind of linked both the development agenda and the business agenda. So it made a difference to the lives of these women who were then getting a livelihood opportunity, and it therefore made a difference to us as well. You might have seen this AV a lot, but it would be nice to kind of go through it again. Here is a story of one of our entrepreneurs, which is a representative entrepreneur from Andhra Pradesh. It's a story about how her life has been, right? And how her life changed because of Unilever Shakti program.
कौसल्या सुप्रजा रामपूर्वा सन्ध्या प्रवर्तते उत्तिष्ठ नरशार्दूल कर्तव्यं दैवमान्धिकम् कौसल्या सुप्रजा रामपूर्वा सन्ध्या प्रवर्तते उत्तिष्ठ नरशार्दूल कर्तव्यं दैवमान्धिकम् उत्तिष्ठोत्तिष्ठ गोविन्द उत्तिष्ठ गरुडध्वज
My name is Rojamma, and this is my story. I was born in a small village outside Hyderabad called Kurumurti 33 years ago. My parents were poor. And even in our small village, most people were better off than us. Somehow, when I was 17, my father managed to marry me to a man. I did my duty. And we had our first daughter. A few years later, I had another daughter. My husband left me. I don't know why. I was all alone with my daughters. Nobody else would marry me. My mother felt bad. She allowed me to work in her small field. She would always pay me a few rupees. It was not enough. A few years later, some people came to our village and held a meeting. I also went. They said, "We will help you women to form a group. We will show you how to help yourselves." They told us how to save our money by saving just 1 rupee every day. And when we had to borrow, we borrowed from the group, not from the moneylender. It felt good to be part of the group. But feeling good is not the same as eating food. My daughters would soon have to be married. What would I do? Then one day, the group people brought a man to the village. The man opened his box, and inside were lots of things. "We will give you things to sell. Sell them in your village or in nearby villages. For every packet you sell, you can keep some money." The company people showed us how to sell the packets, how to run our own business. how to educate others. And from that moment, my life changed. Shakti means strength. And that is what I gained that day. The day I became a Shakti dealer. Today I wake up at 5 o'clock and quickly finish the cooking. Then at 7 o'clock, I run to the road and sit in an auto taxi with my box. I go from village to village before the people leave for the fields. I show them what they can buy. I tell them what the man told me. How this soap will help you to stay free from disease. How this will keep your children's clothes clean. Before, I did not even know these things. Like Lifebuoy, I did not know it kills germs. I did not even know what germs are. But I learned, and I teach the others. Some have become Shakti dealers too. Their lives have changed as well. In fact, slowly the life in our village itself is advancing. And people around me have modern, useful things in their homes. Things that make their lives cleaner, healthier, better. Every month I sell things for 10 to 20,000 rupees. My house earning has doubled. Every month I get to keep 750 or even 1,500 rupees. But there's something more important than money. When people see me coming to their village, they rush and crowd around me. They call me Shakti Amma. Everybody knows me. I am someone now. And I can begin to have big dreams. I want to have a Shakti shop with lots of packets. Every day I will sell. Every day I will earn money and respect. My daughters will get married. They will have happier lives. Because I will make them Shakti dealers too.
So what the project actually created was, it of course provided livelihood to almost about 50,000 women. And it's not just income. So income is one part of it. But what it does is it also creates women empowerment. It creates a lot of confidence. It builds their stature, which is a lot more of other softer aspects where it actually touches them. But it also helps others. So it helped Unilever. We actually gained quite a bit from Shakti. Almost about 15% incremental sales came because of this. It helps the community because now they get access to genuine products and they get access to information on health and hygiene. It also helps the government, right? Because what happens is a lot of counterfeits actually get sold in these markets, particularly down in smaller villages. And that's where the government loses taxes if counterfeits are selling. So there is a large component of taxes also which actually gets collected by the government. So it's one of those which was a win and which I guess today even is a win-win scenario where business is gaining, community is gaining, and there is development also happening. Let me now move on and talk about a second example, which is what we've done very recently at GSK. And here is an example about how do we influence behavior change, right? GSK Consumer Healthcare, as you know, is one of those companies which is perhaps best known for its nutritional range in India. It's the market leader when it comes to health food drinks. So Horlicks is one of the biggest brands there, and it stands for nutrition, right? It's also one of the oldest brands there, so it has the stature that's required to do things at a community level or a social level per se. And if we look at what's happening in these villages, we realize that the problem of malnutrition is extremely large. India ranks second globally when it comes to malnutrition. Child malnutrition and women malnutrition is extremely large and big problems that we face. A recent study which was done by World Bank pointed out that it's not a food sufficiency issue. A lot of people believe that people do not have enough to eat and that's why they are malnourished. No, that's not the case really. Food sufficiency could be a very minor part of the problem, but the bigger part of the problem is that there is low awareness of health and nutrition particularly. There are unhealthy practices which are followed, particularly during the time of childbirth and when you're taking care of pregnancy. And there is weak health infrastructure in the form of doctor network or the village registered medical practitioners as they're called. Now all of these are more social issues. They're not really issues which cannot be solved by going and talking to them and working with them, right? Equally, we also know that when we're talking to the base of pyramid communities, there is resistance to change, right? And the reason why there is resistance to change is because of, I don't know if you guys have heard about the socio-cognitive behavior change theory, which essentially means that when I'm living in a community which is very closely linked, then what happens is that my behavior gets determined by not only my personal needs, but it gets determined by what the community around me thinks. Okay, so the pulls and pressures that the community exerts on me and my choices are extremely high. And that's the reason why any change from a behavioral point of view becomes difficult till the time there is community participation. And therefore, while this is a resistance or a blocker to change of behavior, we could convert it to our advantage and actually make it a reason why people will change their behaviors. But that will happen only when we start thinking about marketing our brands in a different way. We so far think of our brands and we so far think about building individual propositions. So we talk to an individual, right? And see, this is what I will do for you. These are the benefits that you will get. From there, our focus needs to now shift towards talking to the community and saying, what's the community proposition? And therefore, what we need to do is build win-win propositions where the brand wins and the community wins. So in the case that I just talked about, where the context is that there is huge amount of malnutrition and we have a brand which is Horlicks, which stands for nutrition, why should Horlicks not take the entire position or mantle of becoming a change agent which can overcome the problem of malnutrition? And that's where we got a community proposition, right? So what we did was we said, let's create a mission out of this and let's work with the grassroots and the community guys and see if we can actually make a change. And we created Horlicks Swasth Abhiyan, which essentially means Horlicks Mission Health. The Horlicks Mission Health is primarily aimed at making sure that we get rid of malnutrition by creating or by tackling all the three problems that were spelled out by the World Bank report, right? So we will go to the village doctor and make sure that we build their capabilities. So that's one part of the program. Then we will go to the women network and make sure that they know what to do and they are well trained and educated on that. And similarly, we will also go to schools and seed in the values of good health at a very early age. And all of these people who are a part of the community, they actually come together and take this vow, and then they start building their work towards that. Let me show you a small video which kind of encapsulates the kind of work that we do in these communities.
There are 640,000 villages that make up rural India. Weak infrastructure, low media reach, and tiny population units make them notoriously difficult to reach. There is an opportunity hidden in these markets, not only of building a business, but of making a real difference to them by increasing access of our products and knowledge. That's the dream that the GSK rural team cherishes. A movement has started called the Horlicks Swasthya Abhiyan. Today, we reach out to schools and educate young children through the powerful mediums of song, dance, and stories. We capture the imagination of the child while she learns the lessons of health, which have the power to change her life.
Some people came to our school from Horlicks who listened to our poems, songs, etc. We really liked them and they gave us a paper regarding our health and asked us to get it signed.
The Horlicks Health Initiative program is going on in our school. We really liked the program. Our students were also very happy.
The public health network of Anganwadis is now a center of engaged learning. In a Baitak of mothers, we evoke emotions to guide their thinking about caring for their family's health. The pregnant women in the group also go through regular checkups.
This Horlicks Health Initiative program is happening at our Anganwadi center. It has been very beneficial for all the mothers in the locality, as well as they're happy about it.
The village doctors now see regular visits from our sales representatives. And not just to learn more about our brands, they are being educated on treatment protocols.
We are getting to know new things. There is information on disease and treatment. We can explain more to our patients. It is helping us in a different way.
With all these initiatives, the rural initiative is not just building a large business, but also winning the love and respect of these communities.
So the program is now running in almost about 7,000 villages. We are connecting with almost about 1 million people every month, right? And of course, it's given us great joys when it comes to business as well, right? So our Horlicks sales volume, etc., has actually gone up as well. So that's the second one, and perhaps let me now come to the third one, which is the last one, as an example, which is about how do we communicate in these markets, and particularly where the media is not really as powerful, or the mass media is not so powerful. Here again, we have another brand called Mother's Horlicks, which is a nutritional supplement which is to be taken by expecting mothers and lactating mothers. And if I look at the scenario in these communities or in these villages, we do find that extremely low information is what people who are pregnant or women who are pregnant, they get, right? And as a result of that, you've got huge amount of maternal deaths which are there, right? And if we were to do something here, then perhaps we can make a big difference, because this is the most fragile constituent of the rural community when it comes to malnutrition. So if we can actually solve things here, then we can actually make a big difference, right? So what did we do? We looked at what are the various channels that we can use, and finally, of course, zeroed into mobiles, because mobiles are now ubiquitous. They are actually present almost everywhere. Almost about 65 to 70% of families today own mobile, but they're not the fancy mobiles, right? They're pretty straightforward, functional ones, right? That's a different case that in some time, another 4 to 5 years, my sense is that the smartphones will actually come in a big way. But right now, most of these mobiles are very basic very basic devices, and therefore we used voice. There's something which is there in India, which is perhaps could be unique to India, but is the concept of missed call, right? So there are two things which happened when there were wars going on between a lot of these cellular operators. People started giving a proposition which was of lifetime incoming call free, which meant that the incoming call to these numbers were free, right? And the second thing is that if you want to pass on a message which is about I have reached or anything of that sort, all you need to do is I'll give you a missed call so that you know this is where I am, right? So you don't need to talk. The minute you get a missed call, that's a message for you, right? So because of this, now practically you could reach any consumer who has a mobile phone for free. The company or the brand can actually pay for it, yeah? So that's the Indian innovation of having a missed call alert, right, so to say. And if I use both of these together, right, which is that most of these families have got mobile phones and you've got this concept of missed call coming in, we could actually build a lot of information which can actually go to these consumers, right? So what we did was we made a program which was called Mobile Sakhi. Mobile Sakhi essentially means a friend or a companion. And what it does is that at the first time, it asks the consumer to give a missed call on a particular number. And when the missed call comes in, there is a call which is given to the consumer, and we ask what's the month of pregnancy that you are in. Once you get an answer that you are in, let's say, 3rd month or a 4th month of pregnancy, thereafter, every week, they will get advice or information which is linked to that particular phase of pregnancy. So she knows how her child is growing, right? She knows what to do, what not to do, right? And that's the conversation which happens every week, right? Most of these services, when you put them up in the mobile space, you find are very, very low when it comes to upkeep, and people really don't subscribe to it. Here, not only were people subscribing to it, but they were willing to pay for it as well. So that's the value that they attached to this information which was coming in. I'll share one of these pieces with you for a very, very short time. It's in local language, it's in Hindi, so maybe you won't understand it, but perhaps we'll get a flavor of the way in which the conversation happens with these women, right?
नमस्ते। चौथा महीना शुरू हो गया है, यानी अब आपका शिशु तेजी से बढ़ना शुरू हो जाएगा। पता है, अभी तक तो आपके शिशु के हाथ पैर भी विकसित हो गए होंगे, और इसीलिए आपका नन्हा मुन्ना आपके पेट में हलचल करना शुरू कर देगा, यहाँ तक कि वो अपने अंगूठे को भी चूसने लगेगा और तरह-तरह के भावों को अपने चेहरे पर दर्शाने लगेगा। अब जहाँ इतना विकास होगा, वहाँ आपका शिशु भी तो बढ़ेगा।
Yeah, so that's the kind of feel which is there, which is almost like an elder sister talking to you, and it's done in an extremely loving manner, and it's done in a way which is extremely simple for anybody to understand, right? And the result is that in a very, very short time, only in one state, because we did a controlled pilot for it, 20,000 women who are pregnant women who actually signed up for this, right? And they are listening the entire content, right? Which is about 3.5 minutes long, and willing to pay for it. But the most important thing is that the feedback that they gave is that it feels that somebody is out there who is taking care of us, right? When we do things like these, the kind of relationships that we build with our consumers is of a very, very different order. And I personally believe that the way to build brands is by doing these kind of things and not just talking about your brands in those. So finally, these are 3 key different examples that I've put in. And I, for one, am a convert, particularly when it comes to base of pyramid businesses. I do believe that we need to move from transaction, while a business is a transaction, but a sustainable business is one when these transactions become relations. So if you have those relationships, that's when you get sustainable business, right? So we need to move towards that, right? We need to look at ways in which we will build our brand not by saying things about it, but by doing things. And when we do that, then we build brands of a very, very different order and of a very different bonding with our consumers. And finally, I also believe that business is also a constituent of society. So there is no reason why business will not gain if society does not prosper or does not grow. So both of us are linked. right? Having said that, I'm fully aware that business also has its limitation. It's not that business is going to change the entire world and it's going to solve all problems, right? No, maybe no. But it has a role to play, and I guess all of us should be aware of that. And that's the reason why maybe it's going to be difficult in the beginning, but if we persist, then perhaps we'll build a business and a world which is far better to live in, right? And that's what I would end my talk with by saying, come, let's try and walk this path together. Thanks a lot. Any questions? Yeah.
I'm Parmesh.
Hi.
Can you press the button down and speak into it while people online?
Thanks. I'm Parmesh. I'm a Yale World Fellow. Oh, great.
I can wait for you.
Thank you. And I'm here for a few months, but I'm from Bombay, where I work at Godrej.
Yeah.
So 2 questions. First is in terms of, I couldn't help noticing even when you spoke and in the videos, I kind of felt it was an us and them kind of tension. So I'm just, and again, working at Godrej, dealing in rural markets, I'm just wondering how we can overcome this hierarchy of when we are working in rural markets to think of ourselves as providers and them in some sense as recipients as opposed to equal participants. And I was wondering if you have any thoughts on that.
Sure.
And the second is if corporations have to do this, then what is the relationship between, say, if corporations have to enter markets and then provide services in the sense of, I mean, it's marketing ultimately, but walk this middle ground between marketing and education and services. What is the relationship between corporations and then, say, local governments who are essentially meant to provide this? Because us as taxpayers, I mean, all of the tax-paying population pays for these services. So if you're entering this ground, then what are the challenges and perhaps opportunities to work with the government in doing this?
Sure. Sure. So let me take the first one, and I guess it's a very pertinent one. And well, I wouldn't even say that. So I don't think it is about us and them, right? When it comes to, if you are building a business model, and that's one of the points which I was trying to put together in the beginning, is that when we are trying to build a model where development is the way to build business, right? And if it makes sense, if it makes business sense to have development as one of the constituents, and only through that you would actually make your business, then it's not us versus them, but it is more about making sure that not only are they equal, but they are way more capable and they are much, much better, and therefore the onus is perhaps a lot more on us to develop them. So it's us versus them to the extent that we have a responsibility to kind of build them and develop them, and that's one of the cases which comes through when you talk about Shakti, for example. So unless the Shakti entrepreneur does not make enough money, unless her business does not grow, then Unilever doesn't grow. And therefore, it's not even equal. It is about saying that I have to help you or support you in building your capabilities. Perhaps that's the only us and them, because you are perhaps a little bit more fortunate and you have perhaps a little bit more understanding and means about how to run a business, and which they don't know of this business. Perhaps they know a lot of other things much better than us, right? Which is okay, and that's something which we do respect and honor, right? But in this aspect of how to run a business, I think perhaps there is a capability gap which is there, right? And therefore, there is an onus on the organization to transfer those capabilities to that person so that she can do a much better job, right? In a lot of other things, she would be better off, and that's something which we respect, right? She would be better off in actually going and talking to consumers directly, doing home to home, and talking to various people, and she would have much better knowledge of the local place, the local village, etc. And that's something which we do respect, right? What we've also done in Shakti and in other places is that we try and build a union of people coming together. So, for example, Shakti also had Shakti councils where a lot of these entrepreneurs would come together, and they would of course exchange ideas, but that bringing them together also, in a manner of speaking, got them a little bit more of power, so to say, right? So yes, it is a very, very pertinent thing. It is not about us versus them, that you're looking down at them, but it is about saying that what's my responsibility, giving that I'm in a slightly more fortunate position. I have slightly more better or more capabilities, right? And I think that should be there. I don't see any reason why it shouldn't be. The second reason is, second thing which you talk about, which is about can we partner with, or maybe there is a role for government to play, and what do we do in those cases? As I did say, and I did mention that business is not going to change the world and is not going to solve all the problems of the world. There is going to be a role of philanthropy, there is going to be a role of charity, there is going to be a role of government as well, right? And for example, government has put in India itself the Manrega program, which is about rural employment guarantee, but it gives you 100 days guarantee, right? It's not full 365 days. That adds a bit, right? So there is a role for government to play. Similarly, when it comes to health, there is a role for government to play, and there are these schools, and there are these public health networks like Anganwadis, etc., which are there. The role that we can actually put in there is that how can we strengthen that and how can we build that? So for example, the last Mother's Advisory that we have developed, we are more than willing to give it out for free to all the government institutes if they need it, right? And that's a dialogue worth having. And that's a discussion which we are starting in any case. So it is about how do we strengthen it together by playing the role that we know the best, perhaps, right? So if I were to think about creating structures that the government has done, then I would fail in it. I know that, because that's not what I am good at, right? But if I were to do things which can help in what the government is trying to do through my core competencies, then I think I should do that. Yeah, that's where I am on that. Yeah, thanks. Yep. Yeah.
Thank you for being here. My name is Emily, and I'm a student at SWM. I have a couple of questions around the second example you gave with the health food drink GSK. Clearly, there was already pretty well-established brand recognition for the product before you started rolling out these community-based events. And I know that it's easy to transition in that direction when you've already built that brand recognition. And I'm wondering sort of if you had rolled them out in tandem, how that would have been different. If we had, sorry? If you had rolled them out more in tandem, or even started with some of the social programs and tried to bring a product into the mix, how that would have been different. And secondly, sort of you talked a little bit at the end about how sort of the secondary effect of this was actually the ability to sell more products. And I'm wondering if this was really more of sort of a CSR type initiative, or whether the actual business sense and the revenue generated by that made the product worth it as well.
Yeah, so it's definitely not CSR. It's a business, you could say it's a BSR, it's business's social responsibility, but not CSR. So let me take the first one. So while yes, Horlicks was a brand which was known, right? But if I look at how many households are today consuming Horlicks, right? Then the penetration levels are fairly low in a lot of places. So for example, let's take some of our key markets like, again, Bihar and Odisha. Our penetration levels are in the region of about 18 to 20%. So that's fairly low, right? So the idea was about how do I make it relevant to a lot more consumers, right? So that's where perhaps the starting point was. And these were the consumers who were also facing issues of malnutrition, and therefore it kind of fitted beautifully. Had we done things differently if it were a new brand, for the sake of argument, or a new product per se? Maybe a little, right? But some of the basics will not change. So for example, some of the basics in the region of evoking community participation, right? Making sure that we're using the power of the community to influence behavior change, that's not going to be different. What you may do is add on elements of brand recognition maybe through wall paintings or whatever, maybe have some force sampling programs, etc., just to get your brand a little bit more popular there. But what I would not compromise on, or the basic part of this entire program, is how are we engaging at the grassroots level in these villages with the community and the power of community working towards changing behavior. So that wouldn't change much.
Hi, thanks for your talk. My name is Nick. I'm a medical student and also in the public health program and healthcare management. I had a question regarding working in rural parts of India, specifically where in different healthcare markets there are very community-based and relationship-based. For example, if you're working on trying to provide access to medications or diagnostic services, so much of that depends on the relationships you have with other providers in that region and how they're able to refer patients and things of that sort. So I was wondering, based on your experiences, if you had any suggestions or advice regarding expanding to different areas without contacts, and if you've how you're able to translate models that are working in one area to another site where you may not have those relationships in place.
So healthcare is a little bit tricky right now as far as India is concerned, and I guess there are certain laws which, when it comes to, let's say, so if I see healthcare, I would say classify them into two parts: the preventive side and the curative side, right? Preventive side, yes, you could do lots. So you could work with the community structures. You could use, go out to large mass through mobile phones, etc. So there is a lot you could do when it comes to the preventive side. The laws allow you to do that. But when it comes to the curative side, which is where you have a problem and you go to a doctor and that's where you get the prescription, etc. Now that part is a little bit more regimented in the sense that you cannot prescribe to somebody till the time you have done a physical examination, right? Which essentially means that there is a requirement of a qualified doctor to be sitting with you. So most of the work that's happening on the space of telemedicine and this entire remote prescription areas is where you have a local doctor sitting with the patient, right? And then they make a call, right? And then that's how, so the local doctor actually has a conversation with the doctor in the town, and that's how this happens. So there are a lot of such models which are currently happening, right? And are being tried and tested out. They haven't really worked, or they haven't been extremely successful right now, but some of them actually show a lot of promise. So maybe Sky, which is doing this in Bihar, is some, and then there are a couple in Punjab which are actually a little bit more successful. But I would say that if we can take care of a couple of things which are perhaps a little bit more on the preventive side, then I guess a lot of things will actually fall in place. And that's why, and perhaps we are also not so qualified on the curative side, but the preventive side is one where if we can build education and awareness, then things could actually work very well. So I don't know whether it answers your question, but I'm perhaps not so sure as to what can happen on the curative side, but preventive side we can do lots. Yep.
I'm Michelle from FES doing my master's in environmental management. I was wondering, how did these initiatives got accepted within the organization? So does this stay at a very product level, or how did the whole business or company afterwards try to use that as well for other projects?
Yeah. So there's a full journey which organizations go through when we're looking at these kind of businesses or these kind of models. And I guess there is a lot of scrutiny which happens in the beginning, a lot of challenging which happens, whether it's the right thing or not. And then any organization will have all sorts of people. So there'll be believers, there'll be doers, there'll be cynics, etc., all of that. But what happens is that slowly and slowly, when it starts working, and if you're delivering on both, right, and both is critical, right, it cannot be just doing the good things and not making business, right. If you're delivering on both, what happens is mostly people come around you and they start rallying you. Academicians, media, all of these guys also play a role. That's important, particularly when you're building these things. So I would say the story is a little bit chaotic in the beginning to begin with, right? And that's what I saw, at least that's been my experience and what I've seen in other organizations. But as long as you're able to keep your commitment to both, which is business as well as development, and you're delivering on both of these, you do find a lot of rallying around which happens very soon. Yeah. Thereafter, does it Does it get extended to other businesses? Most organizations will do that, right? So if they found a way of doing this in one particular place, then they do export it. So for example, even in GSK, we have had lots of people who are coming in, trying to see what has happened over the last 3 years, and they are going back and kind of implementing it in their markets. We've also had, the work that's happening, for example, the mobile work which has happened on Mother's Advisory. That's moving from rural to everywhere, right? Because it's not just a rural initiative, it's required everywhere. So yes, people do look at these things which can be rolled out, right? And I'm somewhere of a firm believer that I do feel that the work that happens at the base of pyramid, right? You could actually take it to, the middle and the top of pyramid, and you could get a much better value than what you're getting today. Yeah. Sure. Yep.
Hello, my name's Oscar. I'm at the Forestry and Environmental Studies School as well. I'm interested in comparing how successful this initiative might be in rural, low-income USA, and what you think the most significant barriers are to running an effective model in those areas like this.
See, I am, to be honest, and I guess I have a little bit of a capability gap there in addressing that, but I'm not very well versed with the rural low-income USA for sure. But there are a few things which are perhaps, principles which actually go across, right? So one of those things, for example, is that as you go down the income pyramid, the community behavior actually becomes stronger. And the reason why that becomes stronger is for the purpose of, security. It is about, protecting ourselves. So if that's the case, then perhaps some of the community-based models can actually be applied. A lot of the community-based models can actually be applied even to social media and digital, right? So how do you build community and how do you create, kind of voice for this thing? So that's one which can be applied. What is the value that you're delivering, right? That could actually be another one, which is, and I'm assuming that if it is low income, then they are hard pressed for monies, and where do they actually spend money? So the concepts of price performance ratios, etc., are something which will become extremely important. So what's your pricing strategy like will become important. And so it's not only the unit price, but what's the performance that you get out of it, those will be important. So typically when you look at a BOP market, and I guess there are lots of theory around this, which is about building those 4 A's, which is how do you reach them, what's the availability, affordability, acceptability, and so on and so forth. Those principles, I guess, would apply even to low-income rural US market or any market for that matter. The methodology might be different. So for example, reach might not be a big concern here because your infrastructure is perhaps very good, right? So that might not be a big concern. Your awareness perhaps might not be a big concern because perhaps you're well connected, but acceptability, affordability, these will become still important and relevant to to rural US as well. I don't know if that answers your question. Yeah? Yep.
Hi, thank you for being here. I'm Anita. I'm a second-year School of Management student. So as you mentioned, this is very much a win-win. It's very exciting for all of us. I'm wondering why you think, or the barriers that exist that prevent something like this to scale for other organizations or even for you guys to other geographic areas.
Yeah. So, okay, so I've also been thinking about it, and I guess Kate has given me this task to think about it. But so one of the reasons why I feel this happens is because of how the organizations are made and how they are, what's the structure of the organization and what are the processes that they follow, right? Most of the organizations are, I believe, made largely to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of what they're doing today, right? And if you look at the structures, which is, the global HO, et cetera, I'm not sure if that's, aiding new thinking, entrepreneurship, and so on and so forth, right? So that's perhaps one of the reasons why that's there. Second, perhaps this is relatively new space, right? It's not that the business and development agenda coexisting will perhaps produce the best results in all situations. Maybe not, right? Maybe it'll work in a few places. Maybe in some places you will not be able to deliver on the development agenda if you have to maximize business, right? So maybe it works in a few places for sure, maybe it doesn't work in a few places, so that's one reason. Second, the way organizations then are structured and the processes that they follow to do business is perhaps not so conducive to have a lot of new thinking. Yeah? But that's something which organizations, I also believe, are kind of rising up to and waking up to. And a lot of the HR programs which are now happening, right, is somewhere kind of recognizing these individuals or these people or these business leaders, so to say, and maybe in the next few years they would also have different structures and processes. Yeah. Yep.
Hello, my name is Eric Connolly. I'm also with the School of Forestry and Environmental Studies. I'm just wondering what some of the data you're looking at to track some of these changes in the markets after, for example, your first introduction, the Shakti program, how you're looking at changes in these markets over time, and you have this peer-to-peer introduction of sanitation knowledge through soap, and then maybe they're giving you feedback. Soap was a hot item at first, and then how are you looking at these changes?
Yeah, so so KPIs is perhaps one important aspect of this, right? So which is about what all do you measure? Yeah. So for Shakti and even for other businesses, there were very clear KPIs or key performance indicators in the form of what's the delivery for the business, right? And what's happening to the consumers in terms of behavior change, etc. So that's something which does get tracked. It's perhaps not at a level which is that you would go and track it in all the villages, but you would take some sample villages which are statistically valid and then kind of build from there. What you would also keep a track of is what's happening to the entrepreneur, right? So the entrepreneurs who are with you, how is it that their incomes have gone up, right? What kind of business are they doing now? Are they actually more mobile, which is that are they going to more number of households and stuff? So these are definitely these are definitely measures which are tracked to make sure that things are happening, right? Not everything, having said that, not everything can actually be tracked, right? So, and if I look at, you know, for example, if I were to build a case where I say, and we tried this, by the way, we said that women empowerment, we're saying that women empowerment is happening, how do we track it? And then we started putting down a lot of metrics and measures towards that. And we actually engaged with a few business schools as well. But it was becoming more and more difficult. So you need to somewhere see as to till what extent do you want to track it. Of course, there needs to be very, very clear and basic stuff that should be there. But you could actually build on various stuff which may actually take away from the basic program itself. So just keeping it simple at times also works. So for example, the HSA bit, do we know that business, it's having an impact on business? Because it sounds like CSR, we just heard. Is it having impact on business? Very clearly, because we could track what's happening to business in every village. So we know that the businesses where HSA is happening, they are growing almost twice as fast as the other villages. So yeah, it works. So you would keep track, or you would have measures for both business and development, but they could be numerous. So you'll need to be a little bit more selective and say like, these are the things which I will definitely hold when it comes to building this business. Yeah.
Great. One final question, and I see there are a lot of hands in the room, but people can save those for afterwards.
Sure. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Garrett. I'm a first-year master's student at the Global Affairs Institute. And my question has to do with post-consumption responsibility, or to what extent does your company think about what happens to the product after the point of sale and after the consumer uses it? I'm thinking of secondary effects that might come with, for example, the introduction of Unilever as you're coming into these small rural communities. Did you see an increase in like litter? Because places I've been in rural communities, I see those little packets littered everywhere. Or another example might be, I know Coca-Cola is doing a similar initiative trying to reach new markets. You know, to what extent do they think about the increased sugar consumption and obesity risk that might come to those populations as they enter?
Sure. So I guess that's again a very, very important agenda item. And when it comes to things like environment, what's happening to environment, because now you got a lot of packaging which is actually going in there, how you're treating waste, etc. What we did, for example, and we realized that because a lot of our packaging in Unilever days, and I'm talking about 2007, 2008 time, we did realize that a lot of those sachets are going in. The first step was really to build a disposal awareness amongst the consumers, right? So we did experiment with, and we did scale up some of these, which were that we actually incentivize people to give the sachets back to us, right? So we would actually go to these villages and say, you know what, there's a consumer promotion running. So if you give us 5 sachets back, you get 1 sachet free for the sake of argument, right? Something like that. And that somewhere helped in at least ensuring that they were not being thrown away, right? But did it really solve the problem? Yeah. We did engage with some of these guys who were into making those small pellets from all of these wastes. So collecting all of these and kind of making sure that it's kind of disposed in the best possible way, or it's kind of reused. So those experiments did start, right? To be honest, but did it actually lead to a space where we knew what the problem was and how do we solve it, etc.? I think the problem was a lot larger than what we thought, because the packaging waste is, while Unilever is there, but we realized it's almost about 100 times more than what we are contributing, because there are enough and more packaging which is there, and only us coming and taking back our packages is not really working. So we tried to put some systems in place. The good thing was that the channel had the power to build those awareness, right? So we could do that bit. Can we actually build, or did we actually build a sustainable solutions to that? Now the answer is no, of course we didn't. But there was some work which happened. And whenever we are putting these projects or whenever we are building these channels, the important thing for me is to say that while it can take things there, it also has a power to take it back. It also has a power to educate people and do something which is a little bit more sustainable in that sense. So that's the power of channel, therefore. And we will need to move in that direction as well, right? I guess where we were, we thought there were a lot more bigger problems to solve at that point of time, right? Because, diarrhea, for example, there were almost, there was hundreds and thousands of people who were dying because of diarrhea. And we thought that was a problem which we should pick up there and then. And there are enough and more problems which happen in these villages. So how do you prioritize them becomes at times a challenge. So to answer your question, yeah, we did a bit, not very happy with what we did. There could be a lot more which we could have done. But in the overall scheme of affairs, if you were to prioritize the needs and the problems that you would want to solve or put your money on, I thought there were a lot more problems which were a lot bigger and perhaps could have had major impact, which is what we focused on. So we focused a lot more on things like diarrhea and hand washing, etc., which could save lives. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thanks. Thank you.